So once again, we sit down to have a discussion that we call attempted intelligence, and whether or not we succeed, at least we try. This conversation may be somewhat less organized or somewhat less on point than other ones, just because there's a concept that I want to play around with or try to explore, and some of that leads through you being aware of how to perform some card tricks. How many card tricks do you know?
Offhand, I probably could perform 2.
2? Okay. Okay, that's fair. That's more than me. I'm like, you want to know a really good card trick?
Has he got 52 pickup?
No, I hate 52 pickup. That's just mean. Like, it's a metaphorical throw. 52 pickup is really it's just disrespectful, man.
It is.
So, with the card tricks that you have learned how to perform, what would you say the essential elements of performing them are?
I'd say that really the essential.
It's not about the specific details of what do you have to do,
Right.
But with the 2 that you know, and maybe more that you're aware of, what's common?
Well, I just feel that I know something that the participant doesn't know. I'm either setting something up or guiding them in a very specific way where they don't know that it's happening.
So, okay, you used a concept that I essentially put forth to you in a text message in saying that, but you said 2 really interesting things: setting up and guiding.
Okay.
Okay, right. So the setup. What kind of setup do you have to do for the tricks that you know?
Some of them require me to prearrange the deck and then seemingly make it look like the deck has been random or new or fresh before I perform the trick.
Do you actually have to make it look like it's random, or just tell people it's random?
Really, I can just tell people it's random because...
Why would they...
Yeah, why would they assume otherwise?
And then the guiding is essentially the story. Would you be able to say it's the story that you tell while you're manipulating the deck? Or what kind of guiding would you, when you use the term guide, what might you be pointing to?
I'm just trying to think if you're saying the story. I was just trying to actually think about it, but the way that I'm guiding them is, yeah, it would be a story, really, because I'm trying to create this narrative where it seems random and like, oh, you can just pick up that deck, pick up the one on your left or whatever it is, but I actually want them to pick the one on the left, but it does seem random, but I need them to pick the one up on the left so the trick works type of thing. Yeah.
So could you say you're guiding their attention through purposeful action?
Yes.
Okay. But are you attempting to provide freedom or the sense of freedom?
Sense of freedom.
The sense of freedom.
Definitely.
Okay. So there's preparatory work that's unseen, right? That makes it seem that because the preparatory work is unseen, there's no belief that somebody's being guided.
Right.
Now, I think most people that have experienced card tricks know that there is a very specific way to do it, but it still works. Right? So, I know you're tricking me, but the trick still works. And one of the manners in which the trick still works is because you guide my attention. Right? And in guiding my attention, you require me to be somewhat predictable. Is that fair?
Yes.
Right? If I'm not predictable, the trick won't work.
Right.
So the idea being there's preparatory work that's unseen, therefore it's not acknowledged by the person being tricked. Right? The other deal is that as the person performing the trick, you require the viewer to be predictable.
Yeah, well, if I say, can you just pick up the deck on your left? You're like, you want me to pick up on the left? I'm going to pick up the one on the right.
But here's the deal. That still works because it's like, it would really be awesome if you picked up the deck on your left, right? So then the sense of freedom, he wants me to pick up the one on his left. Let's go right. You're still guiding the attention. There's multiple ways to do it. The window dressing can look different. Yeah, the trick's going to be really cool. Just pick up the deck on your left. There's a deck on my right.
Yeah.
Right, and then you get into the situation where they're going to be predictable after that.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right, or there's going to be a wide array of people who are going to do very similar things after the setup.
Right.
Right, so you give them the setup, they follow, setup, follow, payoff. Right. But it requires them to be predictable.
Correct.
And even the people that know they're being tricked, they know that there's a way that it's being done. Now, the other thing is about a card trick is the entirety of the trick is visible.
Yes.
Everything's visible.
Everything.
I can literally see the whole thing,
Right.
but I don't pick up on how it works because my attention is predictably guided.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right, that's how that works. Did you see the video? It was on Instagram, and I believe it was also on YouTube, where Dave Chappelle was talking about how Netflix, how Comedy Central had essentially sold Chappelle's show, the sketch show from the early 2000s, to multiple streaming services, and then Netflix talked to Dave and said, hey, or actually, I think Dave said, hey, to Netflix, hey, guys, what are you doing? And they said, you don't want us to put it up? No, I don't want you to put it up. And then eventually all the other streaming services pulled it down.
Yeah.
But the deal was that Chappelle was talking about something that happened in his past where he saw somebody doing, like 3-card Monte or some kind of card game in a public space, and he lost money, right? But instead of walking away, he stayed and he watched how it all worked. And he saw that a bunch of the people in the crowd that were egging on the person who was playing the game were the friends of the person performing the trick.
Right.
So the setup wasn't necessarily just the trick itself.
Right.
It was the environment of the trick.
Right.
But it's to bring up guiding attention in a predictable fashion.
Right.
You're being placed down a funnel. And you can be placed down a funnel, and even when you know it's happening, it still works. Right? So generally speaking, again, we have the preemptive work, the work that's unseen, so it's not acknowledged. Right? There's a lot of behind the scenes that isn't acknowledged. Yeah, this is a brand new deck. I've never opened it before, and you say that, and then people, why wouldn't you open it before? Whatever. It's not like it's unwrapped.
Right.
Those card decks come in.
Yeah, in the little plastic.
Yeah. Now, if you're really dedicated, you'll have one of those things that will rewrap it.
Yes.
Don't you have one of those?
No, I do not.
No, like a heat seal thing?
I do have one of those.
Yeah, a heat seal thing for things that are in plastic containers of some sort. Yeah, anyways. You can go to great lengths. But again, that's the preemptive work. And then there's having the ability to guide a person's attention in a predictable fashion and have them respond predictably.
Right.
That's what makes these tricks work.
Right.
Now, the general aim here to use a card trick to highlight something, right? Or what it takes to make a card trick work.
Right.
All of the moving parts are visible. Everything's visible. You can literally see the whole thing.
Right.
But because you don't know what to pay attention to, and you're predictable and you can be guided to pay attention to certain things, it works. And you're being tricked, right? Is that fair?
Yes.
We talked about LARPing and kayfabe, so live action role playing. No trick there. People are we agree to play roles, right? But kayfabe was essentially you can literally see all of the elements in front of you, and we're just going to guide your attention. So the idea of in wrestling when you hold your opponent's head and you punch him, you're gonna make contact. Like they do hit each other, but the deal is they also stomp
at the same time.
And the ring has movement. There's a really loud noise, and then the other person who got hit makes a loud response. 'Cause you're playing to a crowd in a large space.
Right.
You need to make noise.
Right.
I talked to you about something like this. The idea of the nature of the space changing the way that something's done.
Right.
So I was speaking to you about karate moving from Okinawa to Japan, and how when it was in Japan, when it transmitted to Japan from Okinawa, it started to be practiced in university settings, so they were much larger rooms. There was people at the back, so one of the things that happened was the moves got larger.
More like, would you say exaggerated?
I wouldn't call it absolutely exaggerated, because that may be a misrepresentation.
Fair enough.
But you had to perform it larger for the people in the back, so they could see it. Right. So, and then that changes the way that it's transmitted, because everybody in that room only learns it in that way with a larger movement, possibly without knowing that the reason the move was larger was so the people in the back could see it. So then this is the way it's done. And then it just keeps getting transmitted differently. But the idea of it's performed differently because of the setting. So in wrestling, you know, the big stomp, we make contact, but we're not trying to beat each other up unless it turns into an actual fight, which it can. But the noises matter. And you know that this is a predetermined thing, but it doesn't change the fact that all the moving parts are visible. They're all visible. So, and you still buy it. So, would you say that most things in broadcast media, either printed, audible, or audible and visual, have behind the scenes work?
Yeah.
They all have setups, right? And then they guide your attention either with the visual, right? So visual being moving pictures or written words, right? And then they also guide you with the, you know, audible sounds and whatnot. They guide your attention. Hey, look over here, right? If when somebody says look over here, you look the other way, you may notice something different. So all of this is essentially going to the concept that everything that is going on leaves some traceable pattern, some traceable mark.
When you say everything that's going on, what are you referring to?
Either more pointedly in media settings, or in settings where somebody's trying to transmit some form of information. It can be, or I would claim, at least in media settings, it's all visible. You can see it. You can track it.
Visible, yes.
You can track it, and even if it's not something that's on the screen, be it the screen with written words, or the audible sounds, or the audio and visual combined in the form of some video, all of those things are visible, and you know that there's behind the scenes because you're essentially required to provide credit to the people who work behind the scenes, the editors, the Foley, you know, the grip, whatever, the third assistant director, right? They all get credit in a lot of things. Now let's just say on a television show, you're probably not going to see that, like on the news, you're not going to see the producers, but if you look it up, you can find who the producers are, right? So there's behind the scenes work, heavy behind the scenes work, and then your attention is drawn and guided. And then if you look at a different station, it's like something's different. So there you go. You can see all the moving parts. You can see the trick played out in front of you, and you still buy it.
I don't know, but I always find it interesting that when someone is excited to see a magic trick, they are less excited to see the trick done and more excited to beat the magician. So they're sitting there waiting, going, I can beat you, I'm going to pay attention to everything you do, and you're not going to get anything past me. And then when the magician gets it past them, their first question is, how did you do it? But I find that, I don't know, just based on how we're comparing this, we don't necessarily ask that in other
settings?
Yeah, in other settings. We don't ask, how did that happen? How did I
could suggest that there may be something cultural there where the fun of a magic trick doesn't make you cynical about it.
Fair enough.
And there's a tradition of challenging the magician and saying, there's no way, I know you're tricking me, and a really savvy magician, I'm definitely tricking you, and it's still going to work. Right? It's definitely a trick. Right? Whereas maybe with other things, maybe we're less culturally used to questioning them, or more culturally used to believing them, more culturally used to suggesting that they should be authoritative, or whatever it happens to be.
I'm just wondering, is that a larger trick?
Well,
we don't question it. Like, is that part of the trick?
I would say that that's worth considering. I can't say that that's true, but I can say it's worth considering. And because it's worth considering, this is why I seem to be so interested in how truth is created, right? Because within a frame, within the appropriate frame, as long as you're following the reasonable steps that would allow something to make a claim to truth and accuracy, then it is true in that frame. And if I understand that frame, I can understand how it's true. Okay, yeah, I get it. It's magic, right? Yeah, because it right directly in front of me, you did all of the steps, and I still bought it.
Right.
Sure, we can call that magic, right? We can term that magic. It's the term that'll work. But if it doesn't follow all the steps, so let's just say we have a magic trick where you did the pre-work, but then as you were doing the trick, you didn't do anything to guide my attention, and I was literally just looking at all of the steps that were right in front of me. I was paying close attention to them, or paying broad enough attention that I could pick them up. I'd pick it up. I'd be able to figure out how you did it. But the idea is that I need you, or I don't need you, for the trick to work. Not only is it right in front of me, one thing's happening, the mechanical steps of the trick, but there's also something else happening. Right? My attention needs to be guided. So that's how you do that. Whereas in other settings, people are, or not necessarily people, but entities of some sort, be them business entities or media entities or whatever it happens to be. All of the steps are, we can understand them. They're all there. We're all in on it. We know that we're being tricked. We know that we're being guided, but we still buy it, right? We still, and we all buy different things. There's a range, but we buy it as truth, right? And what I'm suggesting is we all know that we're being tricked, and we all know that we like the one we like, and then that divides and makes us a little bit more likely to disagree. But we all know what's going on. Because we literally know what's going on.
Is there a way to use the lenses that we've talked about to figure out why we know it's a trick and still buy it?
Well, okay, sure, there's a way to do that. Like, that would essentially be cognitive psychology.
Okay.
Right, so yeah. Yes. But there's going to be disagreement within cognitive psychology, right? What I'm saying is that, so yes, there's ways to figure it out. I would say.
I'm just thinking, like, why
there's
does
other
that happen,
people.
you know?
There's other people that would say no, can't be figured out. It's all truth is all individually created. I'm like, yeah, okay, but there's more, right? The idea that there are different ways to construct truth and different ways that you can claim truth. Understanding the ways that can be done allows you to see, maybe in a different way. We all would agree, I can't say we all would, but most of us would agree that we're being tricked on some level. It's just we disagree on what the trick is. Right? And what the wrong information or the right information is. What I'm saying is it's all a mess. Pull back, develop some skills to understand, okay, what type of truth are they claiming? How have they built that truth?
To use these tools and kind of backtrack and understand where and how it's coming from.
And have they, in the frame in which they're claiming the truth, have they acted in good faith? Have they done a good job? Because the moment you make a general claim, like, this is my opinion, and then I look at how you built your opinion, and there's a flaw in that, I'm like, well, okay. And it's not necessarily saying reject it immediately, it's saying or take it less seriously. Right.
But that's almost like the card trick. Like, if you happen to see my hand move a card out of the way and take the second card, you're like, hey, what was that? You're supposed to take the top one, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're...
Now, the easiest way to do something like that is you're doing something physically with the cards. If you start talking, I do this. Right? Instead of looking at the cards to figure out what you're saying, I look up. I'm just less likely to see it. Right? Really easy deal. At least with that. But the idea being, if I feed you the stuff that you like, if I feed you the candy, the specific candy that you like, you're less likely to pay attention to the stuff that's clearly right in front of you. Do you remember you know the term the elephant in the room?
Yes.
My understanding is that comes from a psychology experiment where what they did was they had a scene play out,
Okay.
and there was literally an elephant that walked through the scene,
Oh wow.
and almost nobody noticed it. Because they were intent, based on the way that the research experiment was set up, on paying attention to what was going on.
Right.
And I think there was, it may not have been an elephant, I feel like there was also one with somebody in a gorilla suit that walked through the...
Just something largely out of place type of thing.
And now, as I've said at multiple points in the videos that we've done, I'm working on my master's thesis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently running my experiment, which is primarily done through an online platform, and people are identifying cues you're essentially identifying cues in a human who is purposefully moving in a very predefined way, and they're either doing what they're supposed to do or they're not.
Okay.
There is one cue so far that literally nobody's seen.
Oh wow.
And it's so essentially what has happened is there's a very specific thing that's happening with the neck that nobody sees, because there's also a very visual cringing of the face. So everybody sees the face.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's happening at the same time as the neck would do this specific move, they don't notice it.
Right.
They just don't notice it. It's through no fault of their own. Their attention is just drawn in a very specific way. So I can say it's not the exact same thing, but if your attention is drawn somewhere specifically
Right.
that should also be doing something else, you don't code it. You don't pay attention. You don't see it.
Your attention's somewhere else.
So again, like I said, this conversation may not necessarily be as pointed, but a card trick can at least lay the groundwork for an understanding of work done behind the scenes, work done before. So it's not seen, so you just don't acknowledge it. You know what happened, but you just don't even consider it.
Right.
It's like, yeah, there's behind the scenes stuff. Okay, whatever.
It's like when you start a sentence with, to be honest. It's like, why would you not be speaking?
Did I ever tell you about
Yes, you did. That's why I thought about it.
my father, being an American citizen, landed immigrant in Canada, anytime we crossed the border, because he was from Detroit, he would say to us, none of you talk. So myself, my mom, and my sisters, none of you talk. Okay, Dad. And we would get to the border, and the border guard would say, citizenship. My dad would say, American citizen, landed immigrant in Canada, wife and children are Canadians. Right? And then the next instruction was, if they ask you a direct question, your answer is yes or no. If it requires more words, as few as possible.
Right.
So then I'm in my early 20s, I believe, and it's just me and my dad crossing back from the States. We're coming back
into Canada.
Back from Detroit to, where were we crossing? I feel like we were crossing the Blue Water Bridge, so Port Huron, Sarnia.
Okay.
And the border guard says, anything to declare? And my dad says, nope. And she says, what about him? I say, honestly, man, no, nothing. Tell me a lie. My dad, I swear, he's like, oh, oh. And nothing happened. Right. It was all fine. But just because of the entire lifetime of conditioning and just general patterns of speech, but I didn't think about it, and I was like, no. Oh, I think he's gonna hate me for a while. Nothing happened, so it was okay. But yeah, anyways.
But to be honest, not assuming anything is out of place.
Yes.
So if I give you the cards and
say,
so all of these are random.
Yeah, the pre-work and then all the steps, all the mechanical steps of what's happening is directly visible to you. But because your attention is being guided, you just don't pay attention to it. So what I'm trying to build over time is my own skill set, and maybe share the idea that there's different ways that truth can be created. And they're legitimate within their frame. But to make a positivist argument, so positivism being there is one truth or one reality, and it can be found through appropriate experimentation, versus the other end of the general spectrum being constructivism. There's multiple realities that are dependent on the observer, the environment of observation, and previous experience.
Just understanding that both of those.
They both have legitimate claims. They both exist with you and I right now. To acknowledge them and the spectrum in between. Right? And understand how the mechanics of that purposefully pull back. So if everybody's saying, I told you about common sense before, I hear so many people say, nobody has any common sense. But, well, if everybody says nobody has common sense, then who has common sense?
Right.
then I thought about it and I said, you know what I think common sense is? Simply the thoughts that come easy to your brain, and when those thoughts don't apparently come easy to somebody else's brain, you believe they don't have common sense. Okay. There's nothing agreed upon as common sense. The only thing that's agreed upon is everybody agrees and nobody has it.
Right.
Like, what? No, that's weird. So we all have this broadly, this concept that we're being tricked, that we're being lied to.
Right.
Sure. But then we disagree about how it's happening. So then none of us can, if any of us are correct, it's by accident. So what I'm saying is maybe make it less of an accident. How did they make that claim?
Purpose.
What were the steps through which they gained the information? Was there flaws with it? If there was flaws with it, then I have to be extra cautious of it because you're trying to manipulate me.
So, with that, I'm just wondering, in a hypothetical situation, would that lead to the development of less tricking and more attempted intelligence? Just trying to get to
I don't know that anything would lead to less tricking. I think everybody's still going to try to trick you.
Fair enough.
I'm suggesting purposefully using an internal locus of control.
Mm-hmm.
So I have control over certain things while recognizing that there are things I don't have control over. So there is an external locus.
Someone who might try to be tricking me.
Yeah. So I can't control that they're trying to trick me, but I can control how I respond to it.
And how you kind of receive
it. If I have more skills that I've developed on purpose for analyzing things in front of me.
And use them on purpose.
And use them on purpose, I may be less susceptible to the trick. So, number one, I become harder to trick. The unfortunate thing is, some people might become better at tricking.
Fair enough.
Right? But realistically, I think most tricks work best on people who are just easy to trick.
Right. Path of least resistance, right?
Yeah. So, and you accept that variation in between things, including humans, is normal. Variation is completely normal. So there will be a range of people who will be susceptible to the trick. And as there are more people in a given area, aka the world, the amount of real numbers that you can trick goes way up. The percentage is the same, but there's more people that can trick, right? So, and that's why you used to see people who were, charlatans and hucksters. They wouldn't stay in one place because people would figure the trick out.
They go to town to town.
So once the people in that place figure the trick out, then they're like, well, I can't do it here again. I gotta go somewhere else, right? So it's just find a new audience. Well, you can find a new audience anywhere. So again, I think the whole thing here is I think it's reasonable to suggest that most of us believe we're being tricked somewhere, sometime, somehow. It still works, right?
Yeah.
And then we disagree about how we're being tricked, right? So what I'm suggesting is purposefully build a skill set that includes understanding how a claim is built, how truth is built, how attention is guided. Build those skill sets, and you might become somewhat more resistant.
Yeah, I was just saying, less susceptible to being tricked.
Maybe. Right. I happen to think so, but I'm going to have to say maybe because I don't know if it's absolutely true because I haven't done the work. And whatever. Anyways, do you have anything to add to that? Any thoughts to place into the conversation?
No, I do not, sir.
Oh, well, fantastic. You're getting better, man. You got to do the same damn thing every time. I think that's like the second time I've said it to you that way.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it. Right. See, you're working on skills. Anyways. That is the end of the discussion. Hopefully something comes out of it that you find useful, and high five. Yeah.